dear warriors, and welcome to another week with me, Susie Pettit, your certified life and wellness coach. Today, I have another coach on the show today, and I am thrilled to bring her message to you. If you have ever wondered about emotional intelligence, I'm sure you've heard the term being thrown around. If you've ever wondered what it is, how it can help you in your relationships, if you are a mother, if you are in a partnered relationship, all of it, it can. And so listen in, we have a great conversation. She is a scientist turned life and leadership coach. She says that the emotional roller coaster that motherhood took her on led her to leave science and dive deep into the study of emotional intelligence. And her journey of motherhood and entrepreneurship made it clear that she wanted to spread this message to other people. And she does a lot with this. Conversation is great for you today because she does a lot with work-life flow, not work-life balance. Like there's some magical place we'll get to, but more of the flow that can bring us alignment and ease into our life. She speaks a lot of the skills that we want our kids to have versus maybe what we're modeling in the house, and to maybe straighten those out a little or shift those a little. And she gives us lots of tools and just a great conversation. I really enjoyed connecting with her today. And I am grateful that she gave her time so that she can connect with us too. And I would ask that if you listen and you are feeling grateful in the same way that I am, that you reach out to her and me on Instagram and let us know so that we can get more of these type of guests on the show, I am bringing you topics that are of value to you, because guess what? You matter to me and we matter to Kirsten. So let's dive in and go. Thanks for coming today, warriors. And welcome to the show, Kirsten. Thank you for joining us on the Love Your Life show.
Thanks for having me, Susie. Really excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited that you're here. And as I said in the intro, and when I read over your bio, my listeners know that you have a background in business with emotional intelligence and sort of bringing out some layers of simplicity, bringing the leadership into the home with emotional intelligence and mothering. And that sounds great to me. I would love to start a little with just a more generic understanding of emotional intelligence. I think we throw the term around a lot, and I would love to hear what your take, like what is emotional intelligence to you?
So emotional intelligence is basically how our brain is wired. Like if we look at how our brain takes information in, and if we can simplify it, we can simplify it to two parts of the brain, which is very simplistic, right? But we talk about an emotional brain and then about the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain. And so whatever we do, whatever situations we are in, our emotional brain is hardwired to pick up on either a reward or a threat, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody knows the fear, flight, or freeze response. So that's basically what the emotional brain is telling us. It's there to keep us safe. Whenever we are triggered into those fear, anxiety, stress responses, we usually, like you said, you sometimes freeze, you sometimes are unable to move, your blood is diverted into the muscles to run away. Mm-hmm. So it is really a response that has been with us through evolution to keep us safe. However, in modern day, we are just being triggered by so many more situations that are not really life-threatening, right? We walk into a room with strangers and our brain is trying to assess, are we safe here? Are we being welcome? Or do we have to get out of here? And so this is happening in everyday situations. In a millisecond, our brain is deciding, puts an emotional tag, so we feel feelings. And then the biochemistry kicks in and even furthers this response. However, when we are in this threat response, let's go backwards. When we are in the happy feelings, in the good feeling zone, right? Our prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, is connected, and we have an amplitude of possibilities in mind. We can think laterally, it's called. We can be very creative. because we feel safe. So we are just taking more risks. We are fun to hang out with. When we are in the threat response, on the other hand, we are really literally, our brain is deciding, are we safe or not? And so our thinking brain gets disconnected and we can't access all our beautiful brain and what we can do with it in a regular situation. We suddenly cannot access it. So what we have to learn is how to, even when we are in these threat responses, like I said, they're happening very often now in situations that are not life-threatening, but our brain identifies it as threatening. So how can we re-engage our thinking brain to be able to have a reasonable response rather than a knee-jerk reaction?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I like to add is that emotional intelligence, we have it and we can get better at it. It's a practice. It is just like meditation. It is just like sports. Mm-hmm. The more you work it out, the better you'll get at it.
I mean, that's so helpful. Like, duh. And yet that is not something that I was taught in school, nor is it something I'm seeing it now more in education for the younger years. Like, oh, this acceptance that maybe that response is happening, that fear response is happening, and you're not able to access that, more cognitive or regulated part of your brain. And yet this is why I love having people like you on the show, and why I do the work that I do, that this is normal. There's not something wrong with you, that you going into that fight or flight or freeze or fawn, that is part of our brain. And I really appreciate you bringing this to the forefront and to the sort of general conversation, because otherwise what I have found happen, or at least what happened when I was growing up, is that it is more that the emotional response was more frowned upon, like something was wrong with you and you need to shut that down. And yet hearing you speak of it, it's like, it's just neutral. It's like, yeah, that's what your brain does when you're in this response.
Yes, and I'm very happy that you said neutral, because we often say there are positive and negative emotions, and they're really not. It's just an emotion that feels good, and others that feel uncomfortable.
I love
but
that.
Both of them carry the same weight. They carry the same amount of information that we really need to process. And yes, like you said, I grew up, I don't remember being told not to feel, or I certainly had been told to not cry or to be quiet or you'll be okay. Like those uncomfortable feelings that came up for me, they triggered my parents. In their defense, I have to say that also back then we didn't know as much as we know now about the brain and about how it works, and that it's really part of like the shoving down is actually very damaging, rather than learning to work through these emotions and feeling the whole range and knowing that it's a moment in time, like when you talk to your kids, positive parenting, positive discipline has a lot of emotional intelligence in it. And it is basically saying, hey, this is a moment in time. It's like a cloud. It's going to go away. Like yesterday you didn't feel sad. Today you're feeling sad about this. Can you tell me more about it? Like, having a little bit of those conversations that are exploratory.
I just love everything you just, I want to circle back to a couple of things. First, just this is why I love taking emotional intelligence as a thing that is linked to, like, emotions linked to intelligence. So it's something that we build. It is a skill that we can grow. It is it's a good thing if we can learn more the wide range of emotions. That's one of the things I work with a lot, is allowing ourselves to really feel the high highs and the low lows. And to your point, that it's not positive or negative, that it is a feeling, and some of them are more uncomfortable to feel, but the more intelligence we have about it, the more, the less scared we are, and the less we're like, oh my gosh, something's going wrong. It's like, yeah, no, I'm just feeling disappointment. This is what disappointment feels like to me. So I really appreciate that as a path forward for people, and that this is something, that we can build in the same way that we build our literacy, or I actually speak of emotional literacy, and let's build our words that we use, that it's not just sad, mad, bad, and glad, and that these are things that we can work on. Awesome. So thank you very much to that. I also love how you said you can't remember your parents telling you not to feel a certain way, but you can remember your parents being triggered with how you felt. And that's what it is. That's when we're like, go to your room, or stop crying, or it's so helpful when parents can recognize this isn't the kid's issue. This is your issue with being triggered.
Yes.
Can you speak a little more to that?
Oof. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot in there. Yeah, generally speaking, like when I look at my family now, and we're two different parents, right? We come from different backgrounds and different families. And so we have had different messages internalized. I can totally see a difference of how I can, let's say, stand my ground. Like on the one hand, stand my ground and set boundaries and keep them. But on the other hand, I can be calmer having my daughter have a meltdown and having my daughter go through these strong emotions. Mm-hmm. Whereas it's much more triggering for my husband, for example, with my daughter, because he has two younger siblings, two younger sisters, and one of them very much operates in this mode. So he's really uncomfortable and he has a hard time. Like he will let go of his boundaries, for example. He will, just to make her stop, or to and it's nothing bad to say about my husband, it's just he is very uncomfortable, and it's really hard for him to see my daughter suffer, and he wants to make it better. He wants to make it stop. Realistically, he's not doing her a favor with this, right? But on the other hand, I have to say, there's my interaction with her, there's her like she's getting different messages, and she can choose what to believe, and she can choose and she's 5. So yeah, but it is hard. It is really hard when you're in these situations where you're really being triggered. Again, it's a practice to recognize. So the first step is always awareness, right? The first step is to recognize that you're in this, that you are uncomfortable, that you're being triggered, that now you are feeling helpless, or and then the second one would be to invite a pause, like really stepping back and saying, hey, I'm noticing I'm being triggered. And you can do that verbally. You can say like this to your kid, and it's actually modeling how to work through this really well for them. I notice I'm getting really worked up by seeing you like this. I need to take a moment. If there's conflict between our siblings, for example, I need to do that sometimes. I say, hey, I really need to go to my room right now, and then I'll come back when I can respond better. So you can actually not only put a barrier, not a barrier, but a space, like a breath. You can do that if that works. But sometimes I really need a physical space. I really need to remove myself from a situation and then come back to it later. And like I said, I think it's really modeling. Do I always do it? No. No, right. I can't. I don't have that much self-control that I can always do it. And it's okay. I think it allows my kids to make mistakes. It allows, it shows them that I am not the perfect mom all the time. I'm not the calm, happy mom. I do get triggered. I do feel all of those emotions, and I do sometimes make mistakes. What I think is important is, how do we come back? Like, how do we talk about it when we yell at them? Like I usually come back and apologize. I make it a point to say, oh, this was not my best moment. But I think it's like as important as the range of emotions, I think it is to show them that sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't.
I appreciate your emphasis on the necessity to repair or apologize, like that it is that is so adult of us when we can model that, yeah, we sometimes we get it right, sometimes we didn't. This time I didn't, and I apologize for yelling, or I apologize for my reaction. What I also love hearing is this, when you can recognize as an adult, and my listeners are adult, so if you can recognize that you're getting triggered, that this is your kid or your husband or your coworker or whoever, if the circumstance in your life, something's happening, you're thinking a thought and you're getting triggered, you're in that emotional state, that part of your brain that is totally normal. There's nothing wrong with you. This is what is happening. To take that pause is so powerful, and how we then start different patterns instead of maybe what was programmed for us is trigger, yell, trigger, escape, the fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, no, you're on, the flight, leave, the freeze, just, succumb to whatever's happening. And to choose differently with that pause. I really appreciate that, while also bringing focus to that this is emotional intelligence. Nothing's gone wrong. Look, mom has a brain too. Imagine that. So mom getting triggered doesn't mean something's wrong, or doesn't mean the kid shouldn't be crying, or doesn't mean anything. It just means that mom has this brain that can act as a brain. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think it is something that we often forget. Like in leadership, in corporate leadership training, emotional intelligence has been a hot topic for years already. I think the last 6 or 7 years, now with COVID, probably 8 years,
Right,
it's been ranking in the top 10, mostly top 6 skills to have in leadership by the World Economic Forum. So it has been recognized in leadership that you need, in order to actually bring people together and bring the best out of them, you need to learn how to work with people. You need to learn how to create resilient relationships, and you need to learn how to model. And so it's just so interesting that it is such a hot topic in the corporate space. And true, it might be in the companies that are more progressive, there might be companies that are not investing in it yet, although they should. Right. But we sometimes forget that what it's all about is how to connect with people, how to relate to people. And this is happening every day, in everyday life. Like it is, you go grocery shopping, you have human interactions. You talk to your kids, you talk to, like you said, coworkers, you talk to, I don't know, the soccer coach, right. whatever, whoever is in your life, you really need to learn how to connect and communicate. And the better you can get at connecting on this deeper level, usually the better in your family. For example, I talk about the buy-in. You get better buy-in with your kids. They want to be part of your home team. They want to be, one of the puzzle pieces that fits together, and that they want to be helpful. They want to really create solutions. They want to collaborate. So I think it's just, I don't know why sometimes we feel like it's a skill for business, but we don't need it at home, or we don't. So this is what I want to change, kind of.
Yeah, it's like we get very compartmentalized, and the more intelligence we can have around emotions, the better served we're going to be with everything. I mean, just the soccer coach, when you brought that up to me, I'm like, right, if you go to talk to the soccer coach after a game and they just lost the game, you saying that your child is going to be out the next week because you're taking a family vacation, and the coach is terse and snippy, to take that personally, or like emotional intelligence comes into play there. It's like, okay, let me think of what might be happening. Do I need to take this personally? He might, or she might be upset that they just lost, and now hearing that they're amazing, my amazing child, who is awesome at soccer, obviously is going to be missing for the next week, might spark a little more of an emotional reaction for them. And it's just, emotional intelligence can help all over. So since you did teach and help businesses with emotional intelligence, and now you work with families with that, what are some, like, where do you start as sort of the framework, or helping people if we're talking more about adults in business, or, talking to peers and potentially partners.
Okay. So what I usually do is I usually work with the moms, although it eventually it affects the whole family. And so what we do is we start by looking at the vision that the mom has, because oftentimes what I found, I'm a scientist who totally changed careers, but what I noticed is that a lot of the moms that I had interactions with, they were very bright, very intelligent, they had successful careers. And then with motherhood, they either became stay-at-home moms or they were really struggling with work-life integration.
Mm.
And for me, it's looking at work, and now with the pandemic, even worse. Like I noticed so many people writing about how burned out they were. They didn't use burnout, but they were so stressed. They had so many obligations that the
Right.
parents suddenly became teachers as well, right? Like they had to work from home. Those that were fortunate enough that who could work from home, they also had to have probably 2 home offices or one, and then the other parent taking care of the kids and their schooling and running the household. And then we were in this whole crisis, sometimes not even knowing if we could get groceries. So it was a really I think it was a time of slowing down, and it has helped a lot of moms and families to reassess. And I think this is really what a lot of us need. We are sometimes so much in this hamster wheel that we just do, and we don't really reflect on why we do something. Mm-hmm. So when I work with my coaching clients, I actually go a step back and I talk to them about their vision. Like, what do you want your life, maybe your professional life, mm-hmm. and your family life to look like? Mm-hmm. And so we look at the vision, we look at the personality types, because I think you can bring a lot of leadership tools into your home. The more you know about the players, the better you can work with them, the better you can, you can tease out their strengths and capitalize on them and help with the challenges or find support or, so I think those 2 things are really at the basis of what I do. And then the next step is we would look at the alignment. Like, are you really putting your time, energy, and money into what you want to build? Or are you kind of distracted and all over the place? Because I think a lot of families, even if both work, it is just, it sometimes becomes this race of having more, doing more, sending the kids to 1,000 extracurriculars because that's what everybody else does. Mm-hmm. And I want them to become a little more intentional. I want them to look at, what does your kid actually enjoy doing? What is their choice? Help them, support them there. Do they have challenges that they need to bring up? Mm-hmm. Support those too. But overall, don't do life as everybody else does. Do your own thing. Like, try to really be intentional about what you want to bring. And then my clients find that they create so much more time that they didn't think they had. They open up money to spend on the things that really matter to them. And in the process of taking your family members more seriously and asking for their input, you actually build those resilient relationships. Mm-hmm. And then, so where am I? I was at the vision alignment. Yeah. And then the building the team. So the last step is how do you really build the team? And some of the strategies would be family meetings. It would be, how to engage and how to have difficult conversations, things like that.
Yes. And like, I love all of this, and thank you. This vision and returning to the vision, and COVID helped in many ways, sort of put a steel rod in that hamster wheel to get us to stop, like, wait a minute. And I, the name of this podcast is the Love Your Life Show. And I find that people have, 100% greater life satisfaction when they are living in alignment with their values and vision, as you're calling it. This, we have this idea, and what do we say matters, And when we can, I hear you saying that when you line that up with time and money and energy, that can really help. And I feel that's the secret sauce to life, is to just keep, it doesn't need to be a balance. It's looking at what's important to you, sort of putting your blinders on to your neighbors and whomever the heck else is out there, and what's important to them, but what's important to you and your little, microism of the people in your house, and setting up a schedule that is in alignment with that. And we are going to feel better about our days and the way that we're spending our money. I really appreciate that and hope that listeners hear that, because it is, to me, it is the magic of living intentionally, stepping away from fear, stepping away from that people pleasing or fear of what other people are going to think, or and that it works. So my children, I have 5 sons, and my youngest is a senior in high school right now. And I very much have lived this way since I had my midlife awakening. That was around 8. I sort of let go of as much of the, like, it's mom's way or the highway, but more of an integrated and team approach. And I gotta say, it does work. Like, instead of looking at what my neighbors are doing and being like, okay, kids, you also need to take piano and band and do 2 sports and sign up for this club. And I just found out last night, actually, that my youngest just got into his first choice of a school again. And I said to him, again, and I mean, my other sons did also, like, it works out. Like, I didn't need to buy into the fear of, but wait, you're never going to get into where you want if you're not doing things that you don't enjoy, like starting some club. Or it's like, to keep that model of what do you like, return to what you like, and things work out. It's that, and it seems almost delusional or maybe magical thinking, but I am, when we get back to the basics of what is important to us, and not so much what we can write out on our family resume or bumper stickers on our car, but like looking at the little beings in our house, or if we don't have kids, looking at ourselves, what lights us up, that really is where so much of the juice in life is. So
I also think it's kind of difficult to do for, because it is a lot of, I don't know if you want to use reprogramming, but I went through regular school, and then I basically did one step after the other, and I ended up with a PhD in science, and then did a postdoc. And then I realized I don't want to be here. I don't want to, like, first of all, the career path through a postdoc and then actually becoming a professor, because that's basically what you're going to do. I mean, it funnels down, right? There's very few opportunities. So it becomes a very competitive space. And I did not enjoy my postdoc experience, because it was really a lot of elbowing. It was a lot of, you compete for resources, you compete for funding, you compete. And this is also part of what drove me into leadership training, because I think there is a better way of doing this. There is a better way of building a team that can be successful, rather than just have individuals strive for the top. But what I want to say with that is that I went through a school system. I was supposed to be doing what others were doing for most of my life. In science, then, once you have your degree, you can be more creative and you can start your own projects, and so within limitations. But still, I think a lot of us went through this way. So we are used to being compared, like all our life, we have been compared with the ones at our level. And as kids, it was like age. It's not whether you're really good at one thing, and that's what we're going to honor, and that's what we're going to push for, or that's what you want to push for, because it's your interest, really, right? So I think I totally understand that when moms or families struggle with suddenly going their own way, with suddenly saying, do I really need this in my life? Do I need that big car? Or could I drive a smaller one and use that money for a vacation or for something else? And like you said, when you invest in your people, in those relationships, in letting them have a voice from early on. I mean, my kids are 5 and 8 now, and they're very different human beings. They function differently. They have different love languages. We just came back from vacation. My daughter came to her room and she set out all the accessories she wanted to wear today to her 2-day school program. My son doesn't care about that at all. But for her, having a bag, having earrings, it's important. So we let her do that, and she's 5. Do we get triggered sometimes? Yes, that's a very good example, for example, because we were not allowed to wear nail polish or lipstick to school, right? But she loves it. And we are homeschoolers, so we are in a 2-day program, and it's a little different. So they accept it. They accept the kids the way they are. And I think if they grow up like this and they see you making intentional choices and choices that go with your personality, again, it allows them to do that. You're holding that space. They get to know themselves really well from an early age on. And I don't think it's surprising that they're being successful, because all the time they had to make those choices. What do I want my time to spend my time on? What do I want to put energy on? So I think it is by you being intentional, you automatically made your kids making more intentional choices.
And I thank you. And I agree. I had a very similar experience to you with this treadmill, and it's like there was one path, and you go to school, and I go to school, and then you go to college, and then you get it was very much follow this until I got to, and I was like, I don't even want to be doing this. But what we both spoke to as another similarity was not having our emotions really held and allowed. And it was this, so then it's all along when we're on the hamster path, if we're feeling uncomfortable and you're not liking your postdoc, or you're not, it's like, that doesn't, you've been trained since you were, in your house, that doesn't matter what you feel. This is what we do. And this is why I think it's so important, or why it's so important to me to bring the emotional intelligence into our house, that it is all about how you feel, because, it is absolutely like, whether my kid has if he's a doctor or a lawyer or like that, doesn't matter to me. What do I want is for him to be enjoying his days. And when I allow that in my house, when I make that a value, like, are you enjoying your days? Great. If you're taking violin, soccer, and you have the kid that wants to do all the 5 activities, or great, you're enjoying your days by doing none of that and staring out the window. There's that acceptance that is really was not present for a lot of us. And some of that, I like to look at how we were parented, not as a like, oh my gosh, my parents. It's just they didn't have that knowledge. We didn't, like Carol Dweck's book on mindset and growth mindset was not available. Neuroplasticity was not, like, we thought we had the brains we had. And so now with all of this and this more of an acceptance, it really, we can be a more accepting house. I love it. One thing I would love for you to speak to, because I heard you speak about this, and I just, you framed it so well. And one of your tools that you use are these family meetings. And you've touched on it a little here with personalities, and how, and I don't even know if family meetings comes up with that, but how you look at the people in the family, so your kids, as different personalities, and are aware of their strengths and challenges. You're not calling them weaknesses, you're calling them challenges, which is very different than, we both have kids right now in the US school system, where there is no opening for that. It is like, you take these 5 core classes and you need to be strong in all of them, or there's something wrong with you. But really addressing this part of strengths and challenges. Could you speak a little more to that, or how we might use that in our houses?
Well, as far as the school system goes, what I think is actually happening is that they support more the talent, like they push to get everybody at the same level. But if somebody's really good in something, they don't get enough support. They don't get enough again, the word would be challenges, right?
Right.
To actually dive deeper. For my family, what
Well,
it
and I was
looks
going to
like,
say it goes both ways, because if they are more challenged, then they feel like there's something wrong with them and broken. Like it teaches
yes,
very well to this sort
yes,
of
yeah,
area.
yeah. And my family, we started homeschooling because we noticed that my son didn't enjoy school anymore. And then we were kind of told we should get an assessment. And back then we were not really open to it. But now we know that he's twice exceptional. So he has those, if you look at the developmental curve, it's a bell curve.
Mm-hmm.
And most kids fall into the bulk of the middle section, right? And then there are kids who have learning disabilities. So they would be behind, they would be outside of the norm. Mm-hmm. And then there's kids who have both. They lie outside of the norm with a disability, but they also have a tremendous strength. Mm-hmm. And so my son is one of these kids. Mm-hmm. And in a school system, even the Montessori school, which is supposed to be child-led, it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. For us, the solution was to homeschool. Mm-hmm. And to look at how can we support him. And we're still figuring this out. This is a long process, and it's a whole new, we open a new, a new world, and we're discovering layers and layers. And as he ages, we can see more that there were already signs when he was younger. But what it basically looks like in your family, what you want to do is you want to be a good observer. Mm-hmm. You want to get to know your kids and have a lot of, we were following Montessori, so we had like everything at their height, and they could be very independent. Independence is a value that we foster, mm-hmm. But independence in a way, not like I don't need you in my life, I don't need help, but rather like whatever I'm developmentally ready to do on my own, because it feels empowering. That's what I want them to do. So we set our house up in a way that they could do a lot of things early on. They could prepare their own snacks, and so they learned those things. But really in personalities, it is noticing what makes them tick, what they like. Again, if I look at my son, for example, one of his love languages is physical touch. For my daughter, it's gifts. Mm-hmm. So my daughter, and it doesn't have to be bought, mm-hmm. but just like a gesture of, hey, I've been thinking of you, for her, that just fuels her all day long. My son needs hugs. My son needs to sit with me on the couch in the morning, or his day is not going to start well. Mm-hmm. So noticing these differences in your kids and yourself, getting honest with yourself. There's personality tests you can take. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, it sometimes can be hard for us because we might identify needs that had not been met for us, right? Mm-hmm. Like whenever we open up to this way of interacting with people, stories might come up that in our childhood, what we really needed was a hug, and we were not given the hug. We were sent to a room, or, so it can be really hard for the parent. It is hard work, but I think it is very rewarding when you see then what persons your kids are. Like really, I don't have better words, but it is inspiring to see how my daughter plans her things and what is important to her, and she brings it into her day automatically. I don't have to tell her, do something that feels good for you. She does it. Yeah. And for my son, he's a little more difficult in that sense. I think it is because of his neurodivergence that he doesn't always notice what he needs. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that I notice and I give him the words. For example, I give him, I don't know, I notice that you're really having a difficult time regulating yourself if you've been on the iPad for so long, for example, or if you didn't get the time to sit on the couch, right? Right. Yeah. So yeah, but it is really observation, and then creating space and giving them the space to be themselves.
Well, and what I'm also hearing is observation without judgment, that your daughter it's very neutral. Again, it's that like, okay, my daughter likes gifts, so I will pick up a rock when I'm walking and I'll give it to my daughter. My son likes hugs, so I'm going to give him a hug when I get home. It's not one is better than the other, or one, it's just, it's different. And that to me is unconditional love, which we're,
Yes.
the more we learn about our kids and ourselves, I understand that the learning takes some effort, but overall, I think it makes life easier. It saves our energy. It's, so you aren't like trying to pick up a special gift for your son too, or a special tchotchke, because your daughter's the one that enjoys it. And then for your son, you're going to set some time aside and maybe give him a foot rub, or, I mean, the love languages are hugely helpful for me. I did a podcast episode, if my listeners are listening, I think it's 171 with the quiz attached, because it's just helpful information. Again, how, I know I want to be aware of your time here, but I definitely want to touch on the family meetings and how that sort of plays out in your house. Like, how does that support emotional intelligence or this leadership and team building in a house? Like, if a listener is like, oh, I'm in, I want to be more flexible and more accepting, can you tell us a little about the family meetings?
Yeah, so I think it's a tool when not, and again, it's a practice kind of. When done right, it can be amazing. And a lot of people, when they think about meetings, they go to the worst meetings they have, like, or unproductive meetings, or where you don't want to speak up, where you don't want to. So of course you don't want to have, you don't want to create an environment where nobody wants to speak. Mm-hmm. You have to again focus on safety, on emotional safety, mm-hmm. to make everybody want to participate. So this is one of the basic steps. What can you use it for everything and anything, honestly? I mean, for us, like I said, we are homeschoolers, so my kids, even we do it for their learning plan. Like, what do you want to learn more about this quarter? And then we're looking at what support do you need, how can we make it happen. My kids
like, where do you want a vacation this
exactly
summer, or what?
Exactly. Or if there has been a lot of siblings conflict, don't resolve the conflict then and there. Mm-hmm. Take it to a neutral place, to a neutral time where everybody is calm, and then you can start guiding them through those conversations. I've been noticing that you've been, I don't know, getting into each other's hair more often. What is it you're looking for? Like, what are you needing? Mm-hmm. What are you needing, and how can you talk it out? How can you find solutions? Mm-hmm. And so this is really, those family meetings, like I said, you can do an array of things. And the really important thing is that when you look at the skills that you want your kids to have, yes, is it cool to play the piano? Absolutely. But is conflict resolution, problem solving, critical thinking, are these transferable skills that you want your kids to have because they can apply them to any and all situations in their life? Mm-hmm. I think it's a definite yes, right? Like making choices, looking at their values, looking at, okay, there's only so much money for this quarter. What do I want to spend it on? Do I want to do music? Do I want to do a sport? Do I want to do tutoring? Whatever. So it gives them really, I think it gives them the opportunity to participate actively in family decisions, and it makes them want to be part. It makes them feel heard and seen. It makes them feel valued. And you hear all these emotions, right? Whenever we are in these positive emotions, thinking brain is engaged, they will be much more receptive to corrections. They will be more receptive to boundaries, because they know that their boundaries are being respected as well. So it is really a communication tool.
Yes.
And it allows them to grow. Really.
I mean, I have behind me a stack of parenting books that speak to the importance of like less authoritative parenting, like you do this because I said, and also not the permissive, like anything goes, but that in between place of, hey, what do you think? And to have that skill being built at home is really really helpful, while also the part that I just want to point out for listeners is this emotional intelligence piece, is that you are, in speaking about this, it is woven into it all, that the emotions are not, as we were taught, like bad, go to your room to have them. They are part of life. And I noticed, when you're saying something like, I noticed you two have been in each other's hair this last week, what's going on? You neutralize it. It's not shame. It's not, oh, you're wrong. It's this, what's happening? And one says, yeah, you know what, I guess I was feeling a little stressed about school, and I just wanted to, control something. So I took all my sister's little things and threw them on the ground, or, and it's like, okay, let's repair.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that about school. We can do something. But again, it's not this shaming, or you're bad for having an emotion, or emotions need to be hidden, or emotions are bad. They're there telling us something. And I really, really appreciate that.
And then also, family meetings, for example, I really love that tool. And it is so interesting because in the beginning, my kids, when we started introducing them, they were like, oh, they were reserved, and they were like, oh, something is going on, we're in trouble or whatever. But now it's like, when they see that there's an issue that's coming up more often, they're like, I think we need a family meeting. So they're the ones asking for it. They are saying, hey, we need to talk this out. And it is just, if you can give your kids those tools to confront a situation and talk it out rather than swallow it and
Oh, I'm just like, I am hearing so many of my female clients just like, like, yes, like if we had learned that, because there's so much, like when there's conflict and then there's that fear right afterwards, like, well, what do I do with that? I can't bring it up. And instead, if we're looking like conflict and removing the fear, like here is a good avenue to go, and you set those neural pathways in their brain right away. Conflict, go talk about it. Communication helps. Let's get it out in the open, in a safe place, in a really comfortable place. And I will tell listeners that I got your tool for family meetings, which is wonderful. And so I will certainly put links to your website in the show notes. And what worked for me to get it started was we already did a family dinner every night that schedules allow, is that we start with, and I started there, not calling it a meeting, because my boys, are older, and they're like, I don't think they would have been open to that right away. But we started talking about going around the table and talking about, I call them GTPs, grateful, thankful, proud. And I did set some guidelines that when your brother is talking, you can't, we're not interrupting anyone. When anyone's talking, we don't interrupt. And then we have a period of feedback. And that then moved into a more loose family meeting, which the reason why I'm bringing this up is to not be like, yay, Susie, because it certainly is not perfect. It's a process. Yet to say that just, if your kids are not as young as Kerstin's, that's okay. You can start, any day is a good day to start with problem solving, critical thinking, teaching, modeling, communication, all of that. It is wonderful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like, I love that you said that it doesn't have to be formal, because in my family, the first ones, we had like this talking stick and we were going through, but also my kids are really young, so they needed to learn kind of the rules of how we want to do this. But now it's like, we sit together, drink tea and eat cookies, or we do it at dinner, or, so it's a much more fluid approach. I just take a paper and we scribble down what comes up. It's also that my husband and I kind of have meetings. Like, we have this intentional time where we're like, this is getting really on our nerves. This is really disruptive to our flow. So how can we do this? So, it's just, it doesn't have to be a meeting with a computer. It doesn't have to be a meeting with everyone and not moving.
Oh, I love it. So if my listeners are like, yes, please, I will have your links to your website. And where is a great, like, are you on any socials that you like?
I am a little inconsistently.
That's okay.
It's really a challenge for me, social media. So I have my website, which is my first name, last name.com.
Right.
I'll let you link to it because my name is difficult to spell. Right. And on Instagram, it's the same. It's Kerstin _Kirchsteiger. And I do have a work-life flow Facebook group if anybody wanted to join, where we just, it's a think tank, it's a community where we talk about these issues, because I think that a lot of moms really struggle with creating time for themselves, and work-life integration is, I think, a big piece are the relationships.
Yeah, aligning those values, and I love it, and I thank you very much, and I will put all those links in the show notes, and I do encourage listeners to reach out, because this is, just at the end there, you tapped on the conversations you could have with your partner and your spouse, and having intentionality there too before that is all wonderful and great. And I think if anything sparked interest in a listener, I will put the links in the show notes and go visit. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you. Thank you.